Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to episode number 8 of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! And today we are going to be talking about making the bad move to win at Yu-Gi-Oh! And what I mean by bad move is if your opponent can see your hand or the players can see your hand, it would be considered a bad move. But you're essentially doing it to bluff them, to make them think that you have a certain plan or play that you actually don't have. But it is kind of like bluffing, but it's a higher level of bluffing. So first off, let's go ahead and explain what I'm talking about. So let's say that your opponent has a Utopia with an attachment, and it is in face-up attack position, and they've ended their turn. And in your hand, you have two cards. You have a Shura, and you have a Torrential Tribute. Now, what you can do in here, let's say, if you want to set Shura and set Torrential Tribute, you're going on the defensive side. They might think it's Icarus attack if you are playing Black Wings, and they might not summon anything. They'll attack into you, and then you'll have a Torrential Tribute that sits there for a while, and really until they summon. So what you can do to essentially make a bad move, but essentially it might actually get you to win, is if you summon Shura, and then you go, Shura, attack your Utopia. Now, the opponent will be like, well, why would you attack into it if you didn't have that Clute in your hand? Now, you don't have Clute in your hand, but keep in mind, if you already have two Clutes already in your graveyard, because Clute is at 2, and, your opponent would be like, oh, he's got two Clutes in the graveyard. Okay. They'd be like, there's no Dark Honest. But if you don't have Clutes in your graveyard, they might be like, oh, he's got a Clute in his hand. I'll obviously negate because I don't want him to special summon any more monsters. So the next turn, what you can do is you can attack the Utopia again, and since it has no attachments, Utopia then would be destroyed by his effect. So, if you do attack with that Shura, keep in mind, do not set the Torrential Tribute. Because if you attack with Shura, and they go, okay, I'm going to detach one card to keep my Utopia, if you set the Torrential Tribute, which, it could mean that it is an Icarus attack, which still is a good card, but again, they can still attack into you, and then you'd be out, and you'd be back to the defensive side. But if you keep this card in your hand, that will reveal that, it obviously is more than likely it's going to be a Clute rather than, obviously if you set it, it's not a Clute, unless you were setting monsters in your spell and trap zone, which there are cards you can do that with, but you can't do it with Clute. So that said, what I'm going to suggest you to do is keep the Torrential Tribute in your hand because, again, if they summon any other monster, they'll be like, oh, I don't want to run into his Shura, unless they're going to, Dark Hole, and at that point, they've just Dark Holed their own Utopia, and you got to make a play, essentially where, you made them think that you had a play that you didn't have, and you still have Torrential Tribute in your hand. So keep that in mind. That's always there as an option as well. Another quick example that is kind of similar to that one. Let's say, again, we'll just take Utopia for another example. Let's say you have a Mystical Shine Ball, and you summon Mystical Shine Ball. Now, agents or any light deck will probably play Honest, so let's say that both players are at 500 life points. Now, he is more than likely going to negate the attack if you did not use Honest already. He might think that you have Honest in your hand, because remember, you have two cards in your hand that they don't know that you have. So, what you can do is declare an attack. And more than likely, if the player that has Utopia is only at 500 life points, he's going to be like, oh, obviously, he's got an Honest, he's going to attack into me, drop Honest, then I'll lose. So I'll detach it. And then what you can do is you can be like, oh, if the cards in your hand happen to be Herald of Orange Light, you can just be like, oh, it's cool, Herald of Orange Light, negate your effect. It's cool. Shine Ball attack directly. Even though, if they let that attack go through, you would have lost. But the thing is, you're kind of making plays that you essentially don't have. Now let's bring this up to a higher level where, it's more so multiple moves, and you're kind of playing ahead of the game, and you're, counting moves. So, let's say, for example, this is game 2, and your opponent is playing Dino Rabbits, and you're playing X-Sabers. And you're going first, and you open up with a hand that looks like this. Let's say, for example, you got Dark Soul, 2 Mystical Space Typhoons, Starlight Road, Pot of Avarice, and God's Emergency Call. Now, pretty much from here, you don't really have anything that can stop your opponent from, going off. If they make a Dolka, you probably would lose. Or if they go for a Logia, then make a Dolka next turn, again, you probably have lost because you really can't do anything, you can't search it with Dark Soul if they go for Dolka. So, that said, what you can do in this scenario is, you can even bluff cards that you might not even play. But, generally, depending on what deck you're playing against, and what deck you're playing, and as far as your skill level, you have to take that into consideration as well. Because if you're known for not, playing certain cards, you can't essentially bluff your opponent by making them think you have cards. So, one example would be Saber Hole. Now, most likely, if I was going to summon Dark Soul in attack position, face up, that would reveal pretty much that I do have Saber Hole. So, even though I don't have Saber Hole, I mean, our hand was Gotham's E-Call, Pot of Avarice, Starlight Road, and Double Space Typhoon, and the Dark Soul. Now, what we can do if our opponent is playing Dino Rabbits, again, we can't really let them have that Rabbit play off. If I essentially set, let's say I decide to set these 4, because I don't want to clog up my back row, let's say that, because if I draw to like a reinforcement of the army or something, or a duality, I'd like to use it. So let's say that we decided to summon Dark Soul in face-up attack position, and then set 4. Now, our opponent probably won't summon Rescue Rabbit, because they're like, oh, first off, he's got 4 back row, and he already summoned Dark Soul in face-up attack position. Why would I want to go for that? If they do have Heavy Storm, you could definitely come back from this a lot easier. But let's say that they didn't have Heavy Storm. Let's say that they just, summon, the Rescue Rabbit. You would probably lose if you didn't set anything. Maybe if you only set like 1. Again, they do run mostly a 3 Space Typhoon. So regardless of what you set right here, if you set a bunch of cards and they go Space Typhoon, they hit something, they're like, oh, it's a bluff. They pretty much feel like there still is a Saber Hole that they did not Mystical Space Typhoon, because again, you're making a play where you want them to think that you have Saber Hole even though you don't even have it. It's because you're trying to make them save their Rescue Rabbit for later on, to where you're essentially trying to stall until you can get those monsters that you need. Because if they go make a Dolka, you'll probably lose immediately. If they make a Logia, you'll probably get your search out, you'll go for like maybe Ember's Blade or something, but then next turn, if they make Dolka, you'll still lose, because these cards essentially can't do anything. And if you can try to use the advantage of making them think that you have Saber Hole, that can essentially turn the game completely around, and they might just be like, oh, he's got Saber Hole, why would I summon? I'm going to set Sangan, and then next turn you draw, you can set, Ember's Blade, you can play the game at a completely different pace, because now with all this back row, you can have a chance to go aggressive on your opponent, and you have a Starlight Road to back yourself up with, in case they Torrential or anything like that. So I hope this helps you guys out understand some ways that you can essentially make a considerably bad play, but essentially you're doing it for the right reasons, and the reason would be is because you want your opponent to think that you have cards, or essentially a setup that you essentially don't even have. And that is the beauty of Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can bluff your opponent. But this is a different level of bluffing, like I mentioned earlier. It's not really like just bluffing with back row, but essentially you're trying to make them think that you have a setup that you don't have, and you're making them think too far ahead. They're like, oh, well, he's got this, so I'm going to play slower, and then essentially you can, definitely take advantage when you have, like, 2 Space Typhoons and stuff like that. So I hope this helps you guys out as far as, getting better at Yu-Gi-Oh! If you guys would like to check out different episodes, I've put some down there in the annotations to watch the previous episodes of Get Better at Yu-Gi-Oh! And everything will be in the description as well, because I know not everything can click on annotations. I know iPad users cannot, so don't worry guys, I got you guys covered. If you guys are on a device that you can't click on annotations, but they'll be there for the players that do. You can just click on the screen. But thanks for watching guys, Asian Eyes White Dragon, signing out.